Okay, so guys, I have almost a large percentage of the people who have taken the test by now or finished it by now and I've scanned have missed this question. If anybody only missed one question, this was the question they missed. So this is one that I'm making everybody listen to as well. Even if you got it right, you need to listen to it because there's a good chance you might have gotten lucky. So I want to make sure if you didn't get lucky and you really thought it out, that's great. No offense. I'm just wanting everybody to listen. It won't hurt you to have a little more strategy experience. I'm going to tell you a couple of things that we've got to remember. I think there's a lot of you who are still choosing either not to read at all, or you're not going back in the passages, and that is hurting you. Maybe it's causing you to fail, and maybe it's causing you to just not do as well as you could. When you could be commended, you're barely passing or something. Okay, so let's talk about what you should have done when you are comparing, anytime you are comparing two passages. So the last 4 questions where it's about both passages, you have got to make sure you look back into both passages. And I'm going to put a note up here that says both because that box isn't on this page. But always check for that box at the top that goes all the way across, that says this, use both passages for this. Okay, what is similar, so that basically means same, about the types of technology discussed in the selections. Okay, so if you skim down, you see all of them are saying both, 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 both. So what they're looking for is something that they both are, what's true for both of these passages. Okay, they both talked about types of technology. So let's go back and review what they talked about, and you can make some notes down here and make a list of things about it or whatever to help you. Okay, let's go back to passage 1. Whoops, passage 1. Okay, where did we talk about technology? Sorry, it lost my notes that I had on here. So at the beginning, we know that didn't have anything about the technology, but then they talked about using infrared images, which is from cameras on NASA satellites. So in the first one, they were satellites. And let's see, this is what they used them for. Satellites took the photographs. So they took photographs while orbiting the Earth using cameras that were very powerful. Cameras were so powerful. And it explains how powerful, but you're just looking at key points. Cameras can do what? They can distinguish between, they can think mud, so they could, and we're just going to draw an arrow that says they can distinguish all of that. That's an arrow line with an arrow. So I'm saying this line kind of continues. And then it goes on kind of skimming. So you kind of skim over here and you look, let's see, where do I see anything else about technology? Look for keywords. And so most of the rest of this paragraph is just continuing to explain the technology, not more details about it, like what it does rather. Okay, he's hoping that this will attract young people. They will continue to use modern technology in exciting new ways. You have to think bigger now. Okay, no more facts about it, so we're still talking about the satellites. Satellite technology offers possibilities beyond what they already talked about. So it goes on to talk about other things. Does it talk about any details about the technology itself? Or is it mostly just examples? So it looks like to me it's all pretty much examples to support this. Okay, so basically we've underlined everything. So the main thing we found out is that the technology in this passage is fancy cameras that are on satellites. They're very powerful, and they're very sensitive and can distinguish things. Okay, so I'm going to go to my question. I'm going to write down satellite cameras, and they were powerful, and they are very sensitive in the sense. I don't know if sensitive is the right word, but I'm trying to use that to talk about how it could really tell things apart. So it's the powerful and being able to tell things apart was kind of sensitive. So those two together worked together. Okay, so let's go back and look at the second passage. What did they talk about? Okay, those notes stayed. So that's good. Saving land. Okay, basically, this is talking about how they can save these, digitally preserve. And it doesn't really tell you, these are all examples of things that this is kind of setting the tone, the imagine if kind of thing, like you would use on your paper. And then it comes down to say, thanks to this company, things are digitally preserved. Digitally means it's electronic in some way. So digitally is like a digital camera. And so digital camera is electronic. It's capturing it not on film, but it's capturing it digitally so that it can be moved from computer to computer or phones or whatever. Okay, sorry y'all. All right. Let's see, this says their mission is to collect and store digital records. Okay, so we're looking along, such as these the destruction. Okay, these are all examples, so not more about the technology. So it says this process, the preservation process that they're doing, keeps the images from getting lost, even if the place itself is lost. So it's kind of preserving this image. Okay, let's see. This goes on to talk about the. Okay, let's see. Specialized. They use surveying equipment, specialized photography, laser scans, three-dimensional models. Okay, that sounds like a lot of technology there. They use these data, and this, I know this sounds funny, these data, but data is one of those weird words that you don't normally learn at your age, but data is plural. And it's by the time you guys go to college, it probably won't be anymore because they're starting to change it, but it's considered a plural word. It's a weird one. Okay, so they go on high definition images, etc. So that looks like this is a good part of our technology mentioned. The specialized photography, laser scans, and all that. Now here, we're going into an example. So that's not necessarily, they did say a few clicks of the mouse, they can have virtual 360-degree photographs, all that. Okay, going on. So this, this would go faster if you were doing it yourself, but you should actually do this and like skim through the whole thing and look for anything you can mark related to technology. So here we get into, they went to a lot of different locations, and the rest of this is pretty much just listing different examples, more places that they preserved. So that's about it. They did continue talking about scans and stuff. All right, so let's talk about the choices. We're talking about the cameras. There were fancy cameras, and then they had, and they were digital. Digital. And they had laser, L-A-S-E-R. Sorry, this thing's going crazy. And what else did they say? Three-dimensional models and surveying equipment. 3D models and surveying equipment. So that's the kind of stuff they had there. So now we have to look for, we're not looking for an item. It didn't necessarily, it says about what was similar about the type. So it's not actually saying what did they use. Oh, they both use cameras. That's too easy. They want you to think deeper. So did they both require the use of satellites to locate the sites? So in the first passage we had satellites. In the second passage, did they talk about satellites? If you're not sure, you should go back and look and see, did anything in here talk about using satellites to get this? Or did they do this down on the ground? Okay, from what we could tell, you can pause the video and read it, but this is all on the ground, where they're on the ground doing this directly at the location. So not satellites. So satellites is not something they have in common. Now, if you try to do this from memory, you might forget. This is why you have to go back in the passage. Both involve the use of recorded images. Okay? Did the satellite cameras record something? And these cameras record something? Yes. Now, if you're thinking of video being a recording, it is, but a still image is still recording an image. You are recording. If you write down something, you're recording it. Anything that you put into into a format that will let you store it and keep it and preserve it in some way, you have recorded that. You have put it down on paper, etc. So recording also can mean photos. So these were both recorded. Now, if you weren't sure, this is why I tell you, even though you know what the word record means, you might need to look it up to make sure there's not other meanings related to that. That recorded doesn't only mean video, even though that's how you use it. So there's a perfect example of a word that you know that you might need to look up before you make a choice. We already ruled this out because they weren't both satellites. Both involve the creation of websites for educational purposes. Okay, so did one of them do that? We didn't even mention this, but the 3D models, they did talk about those, went up on a site, and it mentioned that people could view a 360 view of it. So was that an educational purpose, the 3D model thing? It was. Now, was this for educational purposes? Did they create a website? I mean, they might be storing this for education, or they might use it, but did they mention putting it on an educational site? If you weren't sure, you should go back and check and make sure you don't see anything. Whoops, this one. But I will tell you, there wasn't anything in there about that. They thought it would be interesting to have it stored for all people, but they never mentioned putting it on a website. Okay, so this is the part that's wrong. Even if it's a possibility, it's not mentioned in the passage. Both require the sites to be surveyed before they are scanned. So do the satellite cameras need to survey the land first? Did they mention anything about surveying? Again, you should go back and make sure. But in this passage, oops, sorry, I keep doing that. This passage did not talk anything about surveying anything. Their satellites are up in the sky. They can't survey and then tell the satellite. The satellite's just taking pictures and being controlled from a computer, probably. So no mention in there. So there was no surveying in that one, but there was in this one. So remember, this is another one where you could do the chart we talked about, where you could actually keep track. I can't do the lines very well, but that's like separating these choices. And you would say, okay, this one is, you could even just say first and second, or you could do one about, whatever word you want to put up there to help you remember. Okay, so this one used satellites, this one didn't. This one used recorded images, this one did. This one talked about websites, but this one did not. And this one needed surveying, but this one did not. So it's the only one that actually hit both. So as you're going through, if you're getting confused and you don't get it while you're working, do a checklist like this. Real quick, it doesn't take that long for you to do one. Okay, so this one is not correct because, again, the surveying was not used in both passages. The only one that had recorded images, or the only one that had happened in both, was the recording of images. Okay? And remember, that's a word you should have looked up if you weren't sure, to make sure, is it only video? Don't assume that your world of knowledge is the only way that word can be used. You need to look up more words than some of you are doing.